The BBC has apologised to the family at the centre of the Huw Edwards scandal over the way it handled their complaint. The corporation's highest-earning newsreader was suspended last year after he was accused of paying a teenager more than £35,000 for sexually explicit photos. Following an independent investigation into how it dealt with the issue, the BBC admitted there were shortcomings in the way it dealt with the case, and the complaint was not escalated quickly enough to top bosses. It took 7 weeks for the initial claims to be escalated to Edwards and the Director-General. The BBC claims it has now made improvements but has further plans for greater consistency when pushing complaints to relevant departments. You may remember The Sun broke that story last year but didn't name the presenter after the family said the BBC simply didn't take their concerns seriously. Edwards' wife eventually revealed his identity when she released a statement saying he was suffering from serious mental health issues. He hasn't returned to TV since. 2 police forces concluded that the presenter had no criminal case to answer, but the BBC is conducting a second investigation into his behaviour. It beggars belief that in the current world we live in, where, everyone's a bit litigious, we've had the Me Too movement, we've learnt that, guess what, even celebrities can behave badly, so none of it... If it was 20 years ago, somebody would have seen a complaint and gone, oh, of course not, it's Huw Edwards, that would never... It's clearly a nutter trying to get in touch. We're not in that era anymore. We're also in a place where the head of human resources, the director of the empire that is the BBC, is paid more than the Prime Minister, I would imagine. So they've got an impressive system in place to catch issues that have gone wrong. And it didn't get to the top dog and even the accused for 7 weeks. Where was it in 7 weeks? Where did it go, that? Was it in a cubbyhole somewhere? Was it in a file marked pending? Did somebody simply leave it on a desk?
Do you know what I think happens with these cases? If the complainant had been somebody well-connected, let's say, somebody based in London, in the sort of, bubble, in the Westminster bubble, in the media bubble, that complaint would have been looked at really, because that person would have known somebody who would have known somebody who would have known somebody how to get the complaint looked at. The point about this was an ordinary member of the public who just went into a BBC a department, not in London, and then, of course, it just disappears. And that's the really troubling bit about it, because if you want to cause a stink, you kind of need to know the right people to cause a stink to or about. And I think that is one of the issues. The other issue that I do find, it is harder to get rid of people at the BBC than it is to send a failed asylum seeker on a plane to Rwanda.
You've actually got to commit second-degree murder to do your job.
And as far as I'm aware, I think it's a matter of public record, Huw Edwards is still on full pay.
Correct.
Why?
Well,
of nearly £500,000 a year.
Part of the problem is that it's Huw Edwards, though. If this was a complaint made against a cameraman or a floor manager, I think would have been dealt with straight away. But as we all know, the bigger you are, the bigger the name you are, the more powerful you are, the less people are willing to try and take you on. If I made a complaint about the most powerful presenter here at talkTV, I don't know, Piers Morgan, it would be me that probably ends up being punished rather than Piers Morgan. Not that Piers Morgan has done anything bad to me whatsoever.
JJ, I'd like to disassociate myself from your comments immediately. And let's all look at the floor. It's difficult, challenging powerful people.
It is
very difficult.
But I think that there are a couple of things here. First of all, you make the point about full pay, which is you expect a process to be expedited quickly, particularly when you're talking about a lot of money, which is, yes, the corporations, but actually it's our money, it's the licence fee payers' money.
Too right.
The second point is that they've hired an external consultant in order to tell them stuff that they already knew, which is that their processes weren't effective. I find that kind of management deeply disturbing, very wasteful and unacceptable.
But James, just to pick you up on that, is it not possible if they hadn't hired an external body, they could have been accused of, nothing to see, exactly.
It depends if they'd changed the system.
It under the carpet.
But anybody could tell you that if you have a system where somebody makes a complaint, a reasonable complaint against an employee or somebody linked to that organisation, and that it takes 7 weeks and there is no quick, at least to say it's being dealt with, then that's not good enough within an organisation such as the BBC. But then the other point is, what has been said by the individual concerned is that, whether something is illegal or immoral, it then requires a very different process when it comes to dealing with quasi-talent. It doesn't mean that they shouldn't be held to higher standards, but there needs to be very clear with how that process is going to work. And I think the BBC is its worst enemy. It gets itself tied up in knots when it comes to dealing with
It's not just the BBC,
conduct.
James. Look at ITV and the Philip Schofield debacle. It's everyone. It's not just them. They get targets because it's BBC, but it's everywhere. It's epidemic in our industry.
And the bigger the organisation on the whole, the more cumbersome these processes are, and the harder it is for a little person, a whistleblower or whoever, to be heard or taken seriously. We've seen it. I mean, God, we could talk about the NHS, we could talk about anything, but we've got no time